global population has hit a staggering 7 billion, and in many of the world's largest cities, overcrowding is forcing some, especially the young, to live life on the streets. We travel to Mexico City to go deep inside their perilous world. One of the most famous landmarks of Mexico City is the Golden Angel, who watches over the more than 20 million inhabitants of this vast urban sprawl. But the angel looks down on some more kindly than others.
I've been living on the streets for around 13 or 14 years. My name is Marisol. I'm 24 years old. My son's called Diego, and he's nearly 1.
Marisol is one of the many young people, mostly in their teens and 20s, who carve a life for themselves in the squalid and often dangerous conditions of the Mexico City streets. Official figures cite some 3,000 people living on the streets. Many argue the figure is 10 times higher. A large number of them have come to the capital city from rural areas, driven by a lack of jobs, or like Marisol, to escape family violence.
I decided to live on my own on the streets when I'd had enough of living with my father. I couldn't stand that he was abusing me. He wanted to continue doing this to me. So I left.
Marisol was only 11 years old, and it wasn't just her father who was abusing her.
Not only was I abused by my own father, but also by my uncle, by another uncle, and another uncle. All this is really hard for me.
Today, Marisol lives in a flimsy shack amidst piles of rubbish with a gang of other kids she calls her family. This family is one of many such groups of kids who are drawn together by their struggle for survival. Some live in makeshift shelters on traffic islands, and others even live in dark holes underground. They survive how they can. Some beg, some clean car windows from early morning to late at night. Life expectancy for these kids is just 30 years old.
Firstly, you can die from drugs.
The drug is an industrial solvent which eventually rots the body and the brain. It's called Mona, and it kills hunger and temporarily lifts the kids out of the horror of their daily lives. Another constant threat is gang violence.
Sometimes there are fights between us, even in our own gang.
But even greater dangers await the girls.
For women, the biggest problem they face is exploitation. Sexual exploitation, exploitation at work, and emotional exploitation.
Edna Madai works for an organization called Fundación Renacimiento, which helps street kids. Girls are particularly vulnerable. Prostitution to earn money for food, she says, is common, and so is having to earn a place in a gang.
If a girl wants to be able to join and become a part of a group, she has to let some of the boys have sex with her.
And with that comes the very real risk of contracting HIV and sexual diseases. And unplanned pregnancies are another danger, something this girl knows all too well.
My name is Guadalupe Medrano Marcas, and I'm 6 months pregnant. I'm 15 years old, but I'll be 16 soon.
Lupita, as she's known, and her 14-year-old boyfriend, Adrian, are expecting their first child.
It's not moving now because it might be asleep, but suddenly it will move.
Lupita has been living on the streets since she was 9 years old. Like Marisol, she was abused by her father.
He beat me and made me do all the housework.
Even her stepmother could not protect her.
She couldn't stop him because she wasn't my own family. So she let him beat me.
And so Lupita fled, planning to live on the streets on her own. But she was soon taken by the police to a shelter, one of several in Mexico City, offering street kids a safe haven.
I escaped. It wasn't that I didn't like it. I felt more restricted in the shelter than in the street.
Like many kids, she has spent the last years in and out of shelters. And in the summer of 2010, Lupita and Adrian met at one of them. But just a few months later, they, like so many other kids, returned to the streets. Now they struggle to make ends meet. At the moment, they are living in a room in an abandoned house shared with drug dealers. There are dangers everywhere, but Lupita believes that alongside Adrian, she's safe.
I'm not scared because I know I'm fine with my partner and he's going to support me and to protect both me and the baby. He's always looked out for me.
But they have no running water, no electricity, and no sanitation. They sleep on the hard floor, and both dream of a different life.
I want my house to have furniture, a heater, a sink to wash properly, water, a bed so we're not on the floor, and, more importantly, so that the baby is not on the floor.
But for now, their reality is this room. And while the back streets are emptying, for the young couple, their daily work of earning a living begins.
We're looking for bottles.
Plastic bottles to sell them.
They search for hours. Tonight, they had an average haul. They made just 25 cents.
Gracias.
Lupita! Adrian!
The next day, they receive a visit from Edna, the outreach worker. For 12 years, she has been working with street kids, winning their trust and ultimately trying to get them to move into a shelter permanently. Today, she and her colleague David accompany the couple to a clinic for their first prenatal check.
Medrano Márquez, Guadalupe. Buenas tardes, pasen.
Muy bien. ¿Sabes qué grupo de sangre?
Do you know your blood group?
No.
No?
¿Sabes qué
Do you know
vacunas
what
tienes?
inoculations you've had?
No.
It turns out Lupita is a month farther along in her pregnancy than she thought. She's around 7 months pregnant. Edna knows it's urgent to get them into the safe environment of a shelter before the birth.
Because we are speaking about two children who are expecting another child. If they can get themselves to a place where they can be looked after, I think they will have a chance.
Their future, Edna believes, rides on them turning their backs on street life. And so does Marisol's and her baby Diego. If she can be persuaded to leave the dangerous life of violence and drugs, there's a chance that Diego won't be taken away from her as happened to all 3 of her other children.
They took them away from me because I was on the streets, taking drugs and stuff.
Although still living in the shack with her boyfriend, it seems Marisol is determined to make some changes in her life and not lose Diego too. Now she visits daily the shelter Edna works for. They receive medical care. Diego's checkup shows him to be alarmingly underweight and underdeveloped. A result, the doctor believes, of him breathing in the solvent drugs sniffed by his parents.
Has he been sick?
No, but he's starting to cough.
Marisol also receives contraceptives and treatment for her drug addiction.
Marisol needs lots of support. She needs to feel a bond with something, and above all, she needs to feel loved and respected.
So that the kids on the street don't feel abandoned, we have to bring their situation to public attention.
Diego Palacios is representative of the United Nations Population Fund in Mexico, which is working with the Mexican government to help these kids at risk.
México tiene un gran reto hacia el futuro.
Mexico is facing great challenges for the future. So it's fundamental that public policies are adopted which fully recognize the need of young people and guarantee them a future filled with promise and opportunities.
Opportunities which both Lupita and Marisol would welcome.
I don't know what the future holds for my kids. If they're going to be the same as me or worse than me. I don't know, but I've got to get out of all of this, both for my kids and for me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to come through this.
A conviction echoed by Lupita and Adrian. They too have made a decision about their future.
We're looking for a place to have the baby.
And that place is a shelter.
Buenos días. Buenos días.
When they arrive, they are given something to eat.
¿Se les puede dar desayunar, por favor?
Sí, con mucho gusto.
Gracias, señora.
And Lupita organizes her few possessions and breathes a sigh of relief to be somewhere safe.
Now I have a bed and somewhere I can live well, where my baby will be fine, and where they are going to support us. Underneath a real roof, and not where everyone's taking drugs. That's why I decided to come here.
This time, it's hoped that she will make a home in the shelter, rather than return, once again, to the streets.